Okay, we're going to have to start. So good morning, everybody, and welcome to this live online engineer event. And today we've got the wonderful Alex Worrell from Facebook. Before Alex starts, though, I'll run through what's going to happen in the next hour or so. You probably all realize that you're all muted, and that's because if you have more than one microphone open at one time, it gets really loud and can be quite annoying and distracting. So we mute everybody, except Alex and me, of course. But I mute myself after I finish this. And we'll start with Alex's presentation, which will last about 15 minutes. And then we have the Q&A session. And we use the chat facility for the questions. And so we ask teachers to type in any questions that your pupils may have to Alex, who will then read them out and give his responses to camera. We're booked till about 11:30. Hopefully we'll get most things, most of the questions answered by then. And that's about it. So after the event, if anyone has any feedback, please let me know and I'll pass it on to Alex. But now, without further ado, I'm going to pass you on to Alex Worrell, who, as I mentioned, is from Facebook, and he's the hardware engineering manager. So I'm going to come out of my screen, and I shall leave it to you. With there, Alex? Yeah. I can see you, but I can't hear you. Alex? Hi, Alex, are you there? Alex?
Right, I can unmute myself now. You
Thank
muted me, Chris, like everybody else. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining today to hear a little bit about my path into engineering. For me, it doesn't feel like that long ago that I was sat in a classroom like you folks doing things, and now I've been in engineering for over 20 years. So I'm going to share a few slides with you and give you an idea of how I ended up where I am today at Facebook, where as Chris said, I'm a hardware engineering manager based in our office here in London. So let's see if this will let me share my screen, and I can show you some slides. Okay. Chris, can you see my title slide rather than presenter notes?
Yes, I can just see your
Cool.
title slide.
Awesome, it works, excellent. So for me, where did this all start? Well, I originally went to a teeny tiny little primary school down in the West Country of England, down in Devon. There was only like 100 pupils there. But for me, that was actually where my engineering career started, albeit I didn't really realize it at the time. Because I found that some of the things we were doing when at school, I enjoyed doing the different science experiments. I enjoyed building things in design technology. And in fact, then I even wrote my first pieces of software code right back when I was at primary school. And so whilst I then went on, I went into secondary school, did all my GCSEs, which again, I did quite a bit of sciences and technology related subjects. That then enabled me to go on to college, where I decided that I wanted to go and do electronics because I'd found it interesting. But also figured out that in order to do that, doing maths and doing physics, which is one of the sciences, were also really important and useful topics to learn. And so that in turn took me on to university, where I studied electronic systems engineering. So for me, during school and college and things, that was all very much in this country. What I didn't realize at the time, though, was this would take me lots of places, both with teams that I would work for, or that would work for me, or just different partners and companies that I would go and visit. And so as a result of my work in engineering, I've traveled all around the world now, including, even just for the first time, a couple of months ago, I went to Taiwan to go and see where some of our new products were being made. But electronics is a big and complex area. But for me, it actually started with like the simplest of circuits. Hopefully, everybody by now, probably in science or maybe DT, has done a bit of electronics. You know, the simple circuit of a bulb and a switch and some batteries. And hopefully by now, everybody knows what happens when that switch closes, that light bulb comes on. And to me, when I was doing some of these early things at school, I got a level of enjoyment out of figuring out that I could build things together, build different things, and create something from it, actually make something from these different components. And then as I think one Christmas, my auntie gave me an electronic set, which then sort of gave me an excuse, sometimes accidentally, sometimes deliberately, to go and, well, blow things up. Because sometimes if you wire things up wrong, as you may have found when you've been doing some experiments, things tend to sort of like, you know, blow up and burn a little bit. But at the same time, you also understand how when you connect things the right way, you get a circuit that does something interesting, normally makes a sound or flashes lights. The other thing which I found fun was I was given a train set. And that was something which, again, allowed me to go build things. And so I ended up, well, playing trains. And of course, a favorite, which I know a lot of people like, certainly my own children love, is Lego. And so building things, taking it apart, breaking it, building other things, to me, I didn't realize that stuff is all engineering, and started to learn things around how gearboxes work, how an engine might work, suspension and steering on cars, all just from a Lego set. And so taking some of these things just as a hobby, as a child, I went on and started building things. My train set became a model railway. I started doing lots of different bits of electronics with that, as well as building things, building models. And so there was an element of sort of artwork and creativity, which is something which I really just love doing. And although my electronics at the time was not very tidy, as you can probably see from this picture, it was effectively something where I could start to learn to do things, to use soldering irons, and to learn a little bit more about how to make my own circuits to do things. And then go fast forward a whole bunch of years to then designing some real circuits, real electronic circuit boards within my job once I'd become an electronic engineer. And those sort of things made me realize that electronics, what we call hardware design, actually underpins so many things, right? We're probably all used to playing on smartphones and iPads with some cool games and using them to go and research things on the internet. But underneath all that, to make that possible, to allow that software to run, is a whole load of electronic components, whether it's the screen or the processor or the memory that holds that application within it. There are people like me, where I started out, that go off and design those circuit boards and those electronics in order to enable all of us as sort of consumers to use these fantastic applications. On a completely different end of the scale, one of the things which I developed when I was my job prior to joining Facebook was me and my team developed a storage system, so something which holds lots and lots of data. It contains lots of disk drives, just like you'd have inside a laptop or a desktop PC. Lots of disk drives that are used now in, or these storage systems are used in the world's largest, most powerful supercomputer. It's called Summit, and it's in America. This thing's got like 4,500 computer nodes in it, millions of processor cores, and lots and lots of data storage. It's got about 250 petabytes. So that's like 15 zeros, 250 quadrillion. Again, you can look that up later. 250 quadrillion bytes of data. So that's like 16 million iPads worth of storage space. And so this is something which me and my team created as a system without realizing that actually when something like that goes off and gets built into a bigger system like the Summit supercomputer, that's now being used for climate simulation to understand climate change. It's being used to do research into new medicines, into cures for cancer, into how to make high performance materials to allow us to go off and build all sorts of new fantastic things in the future. Now, I never imagined doing some of those things as a hardware engineer, but yet the things that me and my team have been developing are allowing other people, other engineers and scientists to go off and solve some of those problems, which I find is like just a really cool thing to think about how something that we make can go off and help others in that way. So now here at Facebook, I'm part of what's called the Facebook Infrastructure Organization. So most people know Facebook as just simply the name Facebook, but in fact, we're actually a company that's got a number of different products, a number of different solutions, from the Facebook app that you would see on phones or online, messenger programs, Instagram, WhatsApp. You may have used those, your parents and teachers would have used them. As well as things like our Oculus virtual reality and augmented reality technologies, which are really cool stuff, which we see a lot more use of in the future. So for me, as a hardware engineering manager within Facebook, I manage a team or support a team that is developing products just for our own internal use. So we're creating things to make the lives of all our Facebook employees easier when they're developing products for the rest of the world. We have 2.5 billion customers. And so my team is working on products to help our other teams to develop the things that they do. Unfortunately, I can't really tell you what those are because they're sort of secret, because they're just for internal use. So I just thought I'd share this fun picture instead, because this is how we think of ourselves when we're at work, working all the different things that we do in engineering, creating these tools to allow us to work better together. What I will share, though, is they involve touch screens and cameras and very high quality audio to allow us to communicate across all our sites and to make it easier for us to collaborate and work together as a team. And for us, being part of a team is really important to what we do. You may think in business and things like that, there is the very formal team meetings where everybody is like sat around a table, doing planning and having schedules and things like that. And we do that a little bit, but it's all about sharing ideas and solving problems and figuring out how to use the knowledge of each of the different people around that table to come up with a solution, whether it's a new product or overcoming a problem. And that to me is what engineering is all about. But it's not just about engineering when you're sat in a meeting room. To me, this is an engineering team as well. This is me working in the garden at home with my children, building stuff. This isn't electronics, this is gardening and civil engineering. And you can start these sort of things at any age. It's not about having to go all the way through to university before you can go build stuff. Build stuff for fun, okay? At Facebook, my team is similar in the sense that I have lots of different people with lots of different skills. We all come together and we go off and we solve some really hard engineering problems. And of course, we always have fun in the process because that's very much what we do here at Facebook. Sometimes we do crazy things like just hire a double-decker bus and go out together as a team for fun. And as part of that, we normally come up with some new ideas, and then when we come back to the office, we go try and build it. So before I open to questions to everybody, there's just one thought I'd like you to take away, which is something which we have many different mottos and sayings in Facebook. But one of the ones which I really like, and I think this is a great one for in the area of engineering, is what would you do if you weren't afraid? Because you see, sometimes we hold back and think, oh, that could be really hard. How do we go and do that? How do we solve that problem? Maybe somebody solved it before. But don't worry about those things. Go off and try something new, experiment in doing things a different way. It doesn't matter whether you've been in the industry for 20 years or just starting out. You can still invent something new and go and solve a problem that nobody else has done before. So I always feel, have this in mind as you go forward, whether it's in engineering or indeed another profession. So at that, I shall now say, let's do some questions on the chat.
Well, wonderful. Thank you very much. So everybody, could you excuse me, I'm all tongue-tied. Yeah, if any questions that your pupils have, could you type them into the chat facility, please? And as I mentioned, Alex will read them out and answer them. Could you make sure that the drop-down box at the top of the where you type says to everyone, so that we can all see them if necessary, and obviously make sure Alex can see them. And also, Victoria, could you tell me which school you are, please? Could you message me and tell me which school you are? So it's all yours, Alex. It started coming through already.
Okay, so from Bootham Juniors, thank you. Where has been your favourite place to work for Facebook? Ooh. That's a tricky one. I have to say, given all the different places I've visited around the world on business, I actually still quite like it here in England, in the UK. It is, it's fun going to places like California, where it could be really nice and hot, and do some things there in our big office. But overall, I think it's great just going to visit different places. Certainly in Facebook, we have offices all around the world and people work in all sorts of different locations. I just think the great thing is being able to travel. You get some great experiences doing that, and you meet lots of different people. Okay, cool. Loads of questions coming in. I've got to scroll up to keep up with these. St. Thomas's, how many languages do you speak? Yeah, I have to say I'm pretty bad with that one. I can speak English, hopefully reasonably well, that you can all understand me. I did German at school, did GCSE German, but I can't really remember a great deal of that now. And I'm lucky that I have some members of my team that can speak lots of different languages, which is very useful, particularly when dealing with people and teams in other countries, such as China and Japan. What skills do you need to be an engineer? Well, I always feel it comes back to being creative, right? Engineering is about solving problems, or I like to think of it as solving challenges, right? Because it's nice to have a challenge to figure out how to get over a problem, how to make something that addresses the need. You need to do something, so if you can figure out how to go make that, be creative. In an engineering, there is no such thing as an engineer. There are lots and lots of different roles. For us to build a product, there may be a hardware engineer designing circuit boards. There could be somebody simulating how what's called the thermals operate. So how hot it gets, how you keep it cool enough. For example, if you think about if anybody's got a smartphone, you don't want that thing getting really hot when you're using it because you burn your hands. Somebody had to design the materials and various pieces of how the software works even to make sure that doesn't happen. So there's a broad range of different skills that you can apply to engineering. That's from Shaftesbury, thank you. Again from Bootham Junior, what's your favorite thing about engineering? I like making stuff. I have for many years say to people, I'm lucky I can visualize things in my head. Some people like to draw things out on paper or on the computer to understand what they are, but I like to visualize things in my head and literally will go, this thing I want to create that could solve this problem is this, and I will talk to my children about it, I'll talk to my colleagues about it, and we'll figure out how we might make this thing. And I just find that great. I like talking about turning PowerPoint into reality. So when you get shown, you know, a slide presentation of here's an idea, well, I like to make that real and actually build it. What else we got? A question from Elliot. How did you find out how to change the technology? So I think I'm interpreting that right. So I view as change. Technology is always changing. Things are always getting, whether they're getting faster, they can be getting lower cost that can allow you to build things. There's all sorts of different things that change. Even if you're only like 8 or 10 years old, think about the things that you've seen change during that time. And then somebody like me who's a bit older thinks about the things that we've seen change in that time. Again, if you think about smartphones versus 20 years ago, you still had a phone that was plugged into the wall. It's figuring out how you can make best use of these new technological advances to build upon and build other things. In the same way that if you look now at electric cars, a lot of electric cars are now getting more sophisticated autonomous driving features. Some of those things just wouldn't have been possible with the technologies in the past. So these things all build on top of each other. Sandown School, how many things have you been involved in creating? Lots, hundreds. I couldn't even manage to count now. When did you really know you wanted to be an engineer? Question from Amara. Well, probably in secondary school. I think when I was in primary school, I wanted to be a 3-day event rider, for anybody who knows what that is. And then I wanted to be a pilot in the RAF. And then I figured out I was actually too tall for that. I wouldn't fit in the cockpit. And then that's where I started to head towards the engineering direction. Urchester, how do you come up with your ideas? That's a very good question. Sometimes you might think, you sit there and go, how do I come up with an idea for something? But other times I could be walking down the street. I've even woken up in the middle of the night and thought of something. The challenge is remembering that when I wake up again in the morning. So it happens at all sorts of different times of day. There's no particular time. Question from St. Thomas is, what's your favorite part of your job at Facebook? Again, I love the team I work with. You saw some pictures of them. They're a great team. Even though we're split between here in London and California, we all get on absolutely great, have lots of fun together. And if you can have fun with the people you work with, it's not work, it's just fun. Burgess Hill, what's the most challenging projects you've worked on? So that storage system that I showed you a picture of for the Summit supercomputer, that was really hard. We were doing things that had never been done before, putting so many disk drives in such a compact space at the speeds they were operating at. That was pretty tough stuff. Cool, I've got to talk fast. I'm going to have to get through these. So apologies if I don't get to anybody's questions. What's your work environment like? Were any of your family members an engineer too? Working environment, well, this here, as you can see, I'm in a little bit of a whitish box. It's one of our tiny one-person conference rooms. Facebook offices, they're actually really cool places. If you ever get a chance to visit one, if anybody ever offers you a chance to visit, take up the offer, because they're really cool places. We have great artwork, great style to the buildings. They're really nice places to work. And we get free food and free donuts and free ice cream, which is just like heaven, isn't it? Yeah, I can see you all going, that's how I feel. Were any of my family members engineers too? My parents weren't, but one of my grandfathers was an engineer, I believe a mechanical engineer. He designed big cranes that are used on railways, that are used for picking up and moving trains and things on the railways. I can see it looks like we've got a lesson changeover happening. Bye to anybody that has to go. How else are we doing? How long was the course to become an engineer? So when I did my A-levels were over 2 years, and then I did a 3-year degree at university. Some people can do longer; they can do a 4-year degree, or even go on and do a what's called a PhD. But at that point, I then joined a company and started doing it all for real. Oh, here's a good one. Do you know how much power a dynamo creates, as I'm hoping to include one in my design? Short answer is no, but dynamos are great because that's a form of renewable energy. Because if you attach that to a wheel and you're pedaling your bike, then you're the one that's creating that movement and creating the electricity from the dynamo. Similar idea to how wind turbines work, where the wind is effectively turning the dynamo, turning that generator. So if you can experiment with that stuff, that's really cool. Isabel says, how do you get your ideas for new technologies? Similar to the earlier one, sometimes it just comes to you, sometimes it's through talking with others, bouncing ideas off of them, maybe talking to a different company that's been developing something. And then as you see all these different pieces of technologies available from different places, you can bring those all together and then maybe create something new from that. So it's always about being aware of what's out there and what is possible. Is it exciting being an engineer? Yes. Hopefully you've already got an idea of that. How many hours do you work a day? Oh, that's the one. Well, it varies. It depends on what things I'm doing, whether I'm traveling on a plane to America and things like that. But my working day is similar to most people. I like to think it's not quite 9 to 5, but I normally do sort of like an 8 or 9 hour day, depending on what things I'm doing. How long does it take for a project to go from an idea to a finished product? Very good question as well. Sometimes people don't realize when you see a new product that comes out in the shops, you may not realize how long it takes to develop such a thing. You know, when there's like a new television or the next iPad or something like that, that could have been in development for 3 or 4 years before it actually becomes public. And so even what we see as consumers as like these cool new technologies, the engineers that have been working on those have actually been aware of those for 4, 5, maybe even longer number of years. Which also then it's good to think, what stuff are they working with now that we will get access to in 5 years' time? Because that's one of the things I've always found great fun when developing products is you sort of get early access to things that other people aren't aware of. I've got so many questions. I'm going to have to jump down some of these and see how we get. And Chris, please interject if I need to pause. Within your, how much do you like being an engineer from 1 to 10? 11. Within your Facebook team, what app do you work on the most? Well, so although if you're aware of all the different Facebook apps, my team doesn't actually work on apps. We are creating other products that allow the teams that develop those apps to work more efficiently, more productively. I'll answer some. Have you ever made a mistake whilst working, and how did you fix it? Again, I think that's a really good question, right? In engineering, the chances of getting things right first time, quite small, okay? You can do lots of work beforehand. You can run simulations, you can model things to try and figure out if what you're making is going to be successful. And you should certainly try and do some of that, particularly if you're spending lots of money making something. But ultimately you get to a point where you have to build it, and then you test it and you experiment, and then you improve upon it and you refine things. We're going through that right now with a product which we've just built the first units of. You know, each of these first prototypes costs in excess of $20,000 each. Right, this is like big money. If I had one of those and dropped it on the floor by accident, that's a lot of money to lose. But by building these units, we can understand how they work. There are some things in there that still don't quite work right, but as a team, we get together, figure out how to make improvements on that, try out a new design, experiment with that, and then move forward towards the end solution, which will cost a lot less than that. A few similar ones in here. How to become an engineer. Here, I'm going to answer this one. Who is your idol? Right. I think everybody, often people can be inspired by others, and that helps them in the things that they do and gives them inspiration. I'm going to say actually my idol and my inspiration was actually my dad. He's no longer with us. He passed away a few years ago, but he was somebody who he got on and did lots of things in his life. He was creative, and when I was doing stuff as a child, a bit like you saw the pictures of me working with my kids in the garden, he did the same thing with me. That's where I started learning skills from, and that inspired me to go on and do those things myself and to help others with that. So yeah, he was my inspiration there. Let's get on these. How do you feel millions of people will be using your technology? Well, certainly for the things that I make, there aren't millions of people using them. There are tens of thousands of people using them because they're all basically Facebook engineers. But I think different people get satisfaction out of different things. And certainly I feel that when you can make something, are you guys are heading out? I can't remember which school that is. You've got, I want to give you a wave. If you can make things that others can use to make their lives easier and better, I think that's a great thing to be able to do. And certainly as an engineer, you have the chance to do that. How do your AirPods work? So somebody noticed I'm wearing AirPods, okay? I tend to live in these. They're very useful to be wireless. So AirPods, great piece of engineering. They have speakers, batteries, microphones, and a Bluetooth wireless link that can talk to my laptop. So to build something like that, you'd have had an electronic engineer, a mechanical engineer, probably a power specialist in batteries. You'd have had somebody doing what's called RF, which is radio frequency. You'd have had an industrial designer to make sure they look really cool and match the rest of the branding. All sorts of people would be involved in projects like that. What's the most important part of a printed circuit board? I don't know if there's a most important part. It's how all those pieces come together, how you pick the right components, where you put them, how you connect the what we call the traces in between the components. There are lots of different pieces that have to come together. The most important thing is actually to get that circuit board working so that you can then go and use it in something else. Which universities did I go to? I went to the University of Kent at Canterbury, over in the southeast of England. What advice would you give someone wanting to become an engineer? I'll refer back to my last slide. What would you do if you weren't afraid? All right. So if you want to become an engineer at this stage, you don't have to decide exactly what type of engineer you want to be, but there are things that you can do if you're making stuff, and whether that is building a model, whether it's Lego, whether it's something out of wood or metal, or whether you're designing something on the computer, those are all engineering skills. The link between art and creativity and engineering is so close together, that if you're doing any of those things, if you're doing DT work, design technology, things at school, all of that is engineering stuff. Keep doing it, come up with ideas, try and build your ideas. That all will move you down the path of engineering. What was the first ever project you became involved in? Depends whether you mean that in my career or just building projects as a team. I tell you, actually, a fun project I did when I was at university was a bird scarer. But a bird scarer with a difference. Normally, bird scarers, for anybody that's seen or heard them in the countryside, is normally just something that goes bang, and the bang sounds like a gun, and it frightens the birds away from the field, stop them eating the crops and things. But the idea that we had was to create a robot bird scarer that was going to be completely quiet. And so the idea here was you had a camera that would look across the field, and you'd have this really basic, simple little robot, basically sort of a bit like a radio controlled car. But you just have the camera, and you take the image from the camera to figure out where the birds were and where the robot was and which way it's facing. And based upon that, you'd give the robot instructions to move towards the birds and chase them away. And that was a great fun project because it had hardware, it had Lego, and it had some software and some really low-level programming. So all sorts of fun things that you could do in that, and learned a lot. And that was an early project I did at university. Why did I choose Facebook to work for? So I spent about 18 years through a number of different roles, both design and management roles in a different company. Got lots of experience doing that and across a number of different things. And when this opportunity came up at Facebook to change industries to work in a different area, as well as just the amazing experiences that are available in Facebook, it was basically an opportunity too good to miss. And so I applied for the role, and now here. And I've been here now for about a year and a half, and been busy growing the team since then. How do VR headsets work? Ooh, I'm going to say that's the detail is probably well beyond my my deep knowledge. But the basics of a VR headset is that you have two screens very, very close, within the headset in front of your eyes, and lenses so that your eyes can focus on them, so that you can see the virtual world. And then within those, you've got sound, so you're hearing everything that you're seeing, so you're very, very immersed in that environment. And then there are lots of sensors in that headset to understand where your head's tilted and where you move around, so that the image that effectively the computer that's also in that headset can do, it can move the image around at the same pace that you're moving your head. And so therefore it makes you feel like you're looking around the virtual space. And the challenges that the team developing these has is how you make those smaller and lighter, and have the batteries last longer, have higher quality images, and all of that. Is there anything you've regretted not doing? Maybe, but I tend to try not to have regrets. I like to look forward to how to solve the next challenge, and maybe just look back to think, is there a better or different way of doing something, rather than necessarily having a regret. Is Facebook always going to be safe looking to the future? I guess it depends what you mean by that question. Certainly Facebook as a platform, there are lots of, we have lots of engineers working on how to make the platform safer, how to stop people that are trying to use it in sort of, if you like, nasty ways, how to stop them from putting nasty material on the platform, and all that. And that is an ongoing activity based upon the number of people in the world that use tools like this. But we have literally thousands of engineers working on making the product more secure and safer. Which country have I enjoyed working in the most, and why? I think that's what come out. I enjoy working in the UK, but I like visiting other countries because they are so different. And I have to say, the other benefit of working in engineering and traveling is it also means that I can go traveling with my family in personal time on holidays. So, whether it's to the Caribbean, to Australia, Singapore, Dubai, there's a number of places that I've taken the family, which I've been able to do because engineering is generally is a career that pays quite well, should we say. What are you hoping to get involved in the future? More cool and interesting stuff. I find the things that we work on here at the moment, we're pushing the boundaries on the types of systems we build and how it can improve communication between Facebook employees, and doing things that other companies haven't done before. And doing that is what makes it fun. What is your favorite skill in the engineering business? Again, if you view it as a skill, being creative, thinking up ideas, but also remember, it doesn't have to be your own idea. You don't have to be the one that comes up with like that most amazing idea. Somebody else can come up with an idea and you can help them refine it. You can find things with it that then they may spot, and then you build something else, you refine it, you make it better, it becomes a bigger, more capable solution. And that's what teamwork is all about, right? It's not a single person sort of taking full ownership and nobody else being part of that. Working together and contributing to that solution is what's going to get to the best result. Do I also work at home, and are there any differences between working at home or at work? Yes, so I do work from home some days in the week. I do that because I'm lucky the company is flexible enough for me to be able to do that, and the type of team I have enables me to do that. It's useful because when I have a team which is split between here and the West Coast of America, there are 8 hours time difference between those. And so sometimes it's easier for me to do a meeting in the evening at home, which is morning time in America, so that I can have better overlap with my different team members. It's also useful sometimes when working at home, you can just have less distractions. You can just be concentrated on the work you're doing, whether it's writing a document, creating a presentation, or doing some design. Although most of our employees, I will say, are based in offices. We do have pretty large facilities in different places across the world. I like this one. Do you feel you've gone above and beyond your limits? I guess the short answer is no. And the reason I say it is because I always feel there's more to do. If you feel that you've stopped and you can't do any more than what you're currently doing, that probably isn't really the case, because there'll always be something else that you can just do that bit more on. So that's why I think, don't be hard on yourself if you feel that you've reached your limit, because actually when you sit back and think for a while, you'll figure out there'll still be something beyond that. So I just believe in keep going, keep doing more. And as I've said many times, have fun in the process. I've got so many questions today. I'm sorry if I've missed anybody's questions along the way here.
Anyone to look back on? I don't know. I think quite a few number of the schools have left, haven't they, already as well now?
Yes, I think we're just down to 3.
Yeah. Yeah. So does anyone, Bootham Juniors, if you couldn't be an engineer, what would you be?
I couldn't be an engineer, what would it be? I think I would probably be a gardener, because one of the things I like is the outdoors. So although I spend time like this in an office, indoors, I love spending time outdoors in between, because it also means in the garden I can be creative, I can build things, grow things, enjoy wildlife, all those sort of things I find I enjoy very much. So yeah, I'd be a gardener, which sort of has a bit of engineering to it anyway. So yeah, it's a contrast. But you can, that's the thing, just because you have one particular thing you do in your job or your career, even as hobbies and spare time, you can do things that are completely different. You know, the colleagues of mine here that are, you know, a software engineer, but their hobby is dancing. There are people that, you know, work in London and, you know, and all that in the week, but they love sailing and they'll go out and do that on the weekend. So, you know, big variation. How does your work impact on the sustainable development goals? So Facebook is very keen on sustainability. Certainly as a company that has got lots of data centers, which is where we have all of our servers, so compute and storage, which runs all our platforms, those are all powered by sustainable sources, whether it's, you know, solar or other renewable sources of energy. But also with regard to how our offices are built, we've had a big initiative where we've been getting rid of single-use plastic water bottles across our sites. The London site was actually, I think, the first one to do it, because you can imagine with 3,000 engineers in London, if you drank 3 bottles of water a day, that's a lot of plastic water bottles. So all of that stuff has gone. We now all have refillable water bottles. There are special filtered water taps, give us hot water, still water, sparkling water. Certainly in our offices in America, you can get all sorts of flavored waters and things like that as well that are replacing a lot of the single-use plastics and things like that. So that's just one of the examples of the types of things that as a company we look to do from a sustainability standpoint, ranging all the way from our big data centers through to what individual employees can do when they're in the doing their day-to-day work.
Okay, so is there any more questions for Alex? Because if not, we'll end the meeting.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. For those of you that are still here, I know I've done a lot of talking at you. Thank you for all the questions. It's fascinating to hear what things you think about, and I wish you all the best in your studies and for anybody that goes into engineering. If there's any questions from any of you individually or teachers that you want to follow up on, if you pass them through Chris, I'll do my best to answer those for you.
That's great. Lovely. Thank you, Alex. It was great presentation, great questions and great answers. So thank you, everybody. I'm going to close down the meeting now and speak to you all soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.